Beautiful. Thank you, Andy, for the introduction. First of all, I'll try to understand who's in the audience. So we'll do a very quick round of who's your name, are you a student or researcher, and very briefly, what are you working on? Please.
Duncan, PhD student, timber tracking.
Timber tracking.
Matt, postdoc in the lab, and we're currently working on eucalypt adaptation.
Okay. Okay.
Draco, physiologist, visiting.
Okay. Visiting some more.
Kimberly, PhD, exploration and revegetation.
Cool.
Martin, postdoc and work mainly in the restoration space, but also drawings.
Okay.
Bianca, I do timber tracking as well. Then is my PhD project officer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a postdoc, Eleanor.
Cool.
Sorry.
Andrew, computer system engineer, Turtle Spots.
Stefan, I'm a PhD student. I use a few different techniques to look at how ecosystems respond to climate change.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
John, I'm a PhD student and I'm looking at the origins of saltbush and bluebush in Australia.
Beautiful. Yeah, I know you. All right, thanks for that. I wish I had such a good memory to remember everyone's name, but I don't, unfortunately. So let's get started with the workshop. So it's called Animate Your Science, but we could actually change the name to telling just about any story with any type of media. And this is because the principles I'm going to talk to you about are really general and can be applied to all sorts of topics and also any type of media, so not just video. I'll be referring very often to video because that's my favorite media, but could work in blog posts, infographics, you name it. So also I will use some examples from the marine sciences because I am a marine biologist and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my PhD work, but don't worry, everything is applicable to your field. So first message I want to get across is this. So you can approach communication in a couple of ways. First way is just the way you feel like doing it without thinking too much about it, and you talk the way you like to talk. The other way, which is the better way, is you talk the way they listen. And that makes huge difference because what's interesting is that people listen in a formulaic way. So if you know the formula, you'll be able to get into their brain and deliver your message in the right way and at the right time. So we're going to get back to this concept often today, but yeah, remember, you have to learn how to talk the way they listen. And because today we talk about stories, I'm going to start by telling you my story. So not too long ago, I was a PhD student at the very exciting moment. I finally had my first paper accepted for publication. And I told my mom, very proud, she put the paper on the fridge, but I expected something more. However, I was well aware of the barrier that the 10 pages long paper with 7 black and white figures packed with jargon was. So I was asking myself ways of getting that message out there. And my research was on the effect of climate change on fish behavior. So I felt would have been relevant to just about anyone who likes to fish, to eat fish, or even just to look at them while scuba diving. So these kind of questions were floating in my mind. What's the point of my research if no one knows and no one cares? And will my paper make any difference in this world? I've been slaving for years for this paper. Will it actually change anything? And then I asked myself, what's the whole point of climate science? And the only answer I could come up with is, well, the point is to let the public know what we risk if we don't change our carbon emission business as usual habit. So I got it. I needed to communicate. However, communication is not easy. And the world is unfortunately overloaded with crap information. Just realize I'm being recorded for that. So one day, just to depress myself, I compared how many Google hits you get if you type ocean acidification, which was my PhD topic, and Kim Kardashian. Turns out you get about 200 times more hits with Kim Kardashian. And I hope Kim Kardashian is not in the audience today. She does not get offended, but I believe ocean acidification is more important. But so this is the reality, and we have to basically breach through this wall of useless information. And so the way we do it matters because it will directly affect the final outcome. And communication is not easy, not at all. It's a science in itself. And I did not receive any formal training like this workshop today. I basically had to learn it by myself. So I started searching for good books on the topic, and I found this amazing book written by Randy Olson, who, by the way, is a marine biologist that after getting tenure decided to do a bit of a career change and go to Hollywood and start to study cinema. And this guy wrote now 3 books in science communication, which are really great and really dense and very useful advice. And he distilled basically techniques of storytelling in a way that are really simple and easy to understandable to scientists. And it worked for me. I just read the book and understood it and picked it up. So it's a really well-written book. And I really like this quote that says, in today's world where we're overloaded with information, a good story has the ability to cut through everything. And I think this is very true. And this goes back to talk the way they listen. And the way human beings listen is with stories. Since we're kids, we're hardwired to relate and connect with stories. So guess what? Even when we're grown up, we don't change. We still like stories. That's why we love to read novels and watch movies, because they tell good stories. So now I had some principles of storytelling and science communication. I still didn't know how to communicate my science. So I was considering, should I write a blog? And I thought, maybe no, I'm not really passionate about writing. I think I will, lose interest in the long term. How about poetry? I'm completely hopeless with that, so I ditched it straight away. Singing a song about my PhD, even worse, because my voice, my singing skills are absolutely terrible. And then I asked myself, what do I like? How do I like to learn about new things in a fun way? Well, I like to spend a lot of time on YouTube watching science videos. So I thought, how about I make one of those? And the coolest ones are made with animations. So instead of having someone talking about that science, have an animation. That makes it a lot more interesting and engaging. So it's undeniable, video is the medium of the moment. And so I decided, all right, what's going to be a video? And then this popped up. It's a very good platform that basically aggregates these competitions. Most of them are around science communication. And this one in particular invited scientists from all over Australia to make a 3-minute long video about their research and basically compete for who did the best type of video, the most easy to understand, and who collected most votes from the public. And there was an interesting prize pool of $15,000, which for a poor PhD student was very interesting. So then I had to decide what type of video, because of course you can approach video in many different many different ways. So should I make a talking head videos? And I thought, probably a bit boring. It's certainly the easiest option you can follow, but from a communication point of view, it doesn't work very well. Footage from my lab experiments, I had plenty of that, but it was pretty boring because I worked with tiny little fish swimming back and forth in a white chamber forever, so I would have bored people to death. And so the only option I had left really was animation. And I thought, well, that would be really cool. And I think that would work very well. However, I'm not an animator. Well, it turns out you don't have to worry too much about that. Because today you don't need to be Walt Disney to make a pretty good job with an animation videos, because there's a few affordable and relatively easy to use softwares out there. So basically all the magic ingredients were there. I had the good intentions to communicate my research, some elements of science communication and storytelling. I had that software, which was the necessary tool to do it, and the juicy cash prize to aim for. And the competition gave me a clear deadline. So at the end, I told to myself, just sit down and do it by the deadline. And this is what I came up with.
I would like you to imagine to be a baby fish. You're small like a rice grain. You're very cute. And you're happily drifting in the ocean. When you're about 2 weeks old, your body starts changing. You become strong. You grow functional fins. But most importantly, your instincts are telling you that it's time to move on and make the move to the place where grown-up fish live. It's time to go to the reef. But how to get there, right? You are far offshore and don't have a map. Well, thankfully, reefs are really noisy places. And because the noise of the reef propagates long distances offshore, you can simply follow this sound as a guide. So finally, following the sound of the reef, you get to destination. Settle in a beautiful reef and live happily. But there is a problem. Far away from you, humans are burning fossil fuels like crazy. Unfortunately for you, about a third of the carbon that humans are releasing in the atmosphere is dissolving in the ocean and changing its chemistry, in a process called ocean acidification. During my PhD, I discovered that levels of ocean acidification, like those expected by the end of the century, can cause big problems to our marine friends. I discovered that baby fish can become disoriented, and instead of being attracted by the sound of the reef as they should, they become deterred by that sound. So now imagine to be that baby fish at the end of the century. Ocean acidification is now interfering with the functioning of your brain, and your instincts are telling you to go into the wrong direction. You're literally a fish lost at sea. You have little chances of survival, and you will probably never reach dinner plate size. So going back to us, I want you to understand that what is at stake here is not just the life of a baby fish, but also our multi-billion-dollar fishing industry, thousands of jobs, and the livelihood of millions of people who rely on fish as the main source of proteins. Well, fortunately, it's not too late, and we can stop ocean acidification before it becomes too dangerous. All we need to do is to reduce carbon emissions, and each one of you can help. I ask you to please listen to the science and start doing something that will ensure a bright future for the ocean, for the humankind, and for our baby fish. This research is the most important thing I've ever been involved in. I'm doing my best, but I need your support to help me continue my work, attend conferences, and engage with the general public. Thank you very much.
All right. So that little video took me quite far. It won 3 different awards in science communication, which resulted in about $6,000 in cash prizes, which for a poor PhD student, it's pretty good. Reached thousands of people around the world. Turns out to be a great addition for my media release, because journalists and bloggers like to include this type of content in their articles to make them more interesting, and also by having a video in an article, you improve the Google rankings of that article, because Google tries to basically help YouTube, which is owned by Google. So every YouTube video helps your visibility on the internet. But most importantly, I connected with people out there and made a small but actually important difference. And there were some pretty special moments when complete strangers came to me and they told me, oh, for the first time, thanks to your video, I understand what the problem is with ocean acidification. And they realized the importance of my work as a researcher, and they told me, thank you for doing what you're doing. And that's a little thing, but it meant a lot to me, because I realized, wow, no one ever before told me, thank you for doing the research you're doing. I thought it was a given. So the point I want to get across here is that doing outreach, communicating your science to the broader audience, it's rewarding. It's really rewarding. You'll find when it works, you find that you create that magic thing called connection with your audience. You'll find that as an extremely rewarding experience. So now we're going to dissect my video. because trust me, there's a lot of thinking behind that 3-minute long video. So now we're going to tear it apart and analyze it. First of all, there's a protagonist. In this video, the protagonist is the baby fish, which has some specific characteristics. It's small, it's cute, resourceful, and vulnerable. And it's very important for a character to have these flaws, because that makes the character more relatable and more human. Every person in this room, every human being on this planet has flaws. No one is perfect. If you put flaws in your character, you'll make your character more relatable to everyone. And think about Spider-Man. He's a superhero, yes, but he's also an average dude that struggles to get the girl he loves. And I'm sure many people love him for that reason, because somehow they relate to that. So flawed protagonists work best in stories. So don't have your protagonist be perfect and invincible. It can have some strong characteristics, but it also needs some weaknesses and flaws. There is a storyline. The story is very simple, but the important thing is that there is a story. There's a small and resourceful fish trying to find a home, but humans cause ocean acidification. That's the element of conflict. Therefore, our baby fish risks to become lost at sea. And so the story moves forward until the resolution, which in this case it's an open ending because we're talking about future scenarios of climate change. Important thing, there is in the video one message only, but if you look at the peer review article behind that video, you find 7 graphs. So 7 graphs potentially tell 7 different messages. But I realized that if I put all that information in a 3-minute long video, it would have made a huge mess. So I had to basically boil it down over and over again until I kept the very essential. So my suggestion is keep it simple, stick to one message. And I know this is difficult because you would like to talk about all your discoveries, all your results, but trust me, from a communication point of view, it's a lot more effective to stick with one main message, the most important one, and keep the rest out. Leave the rest for your peer-reviewed paper. And there's this thing in storytelling called the power of one. And to make you understand what it is, I'll give you an example. Think about the last time you've watched on TV the reporter talking about an earthquake somewhere far away, 1,000 victims, a horrible tragedy. They show you images of this city that is falling apart, and you feel bad for it, but you cannot really relate very much because you don't know these people. There's so many of them, it's hard to relate to 1,000 people, and you don't know anything about them. Think about instead when the day after, the smart TV reporter comes out with the story of Max, the rescue dog who sacrificed his life to save that poor little girl that was trapped under the rubble of the earthquakes. And they show you pictures of Max, the dog. They interviewed the trainer that tells that Max was a great dog, absolutely a fantastic dog, and they show you videos of Max playing. And all of a sudden you feel something in your heart. You relate to that animal, and you admire that animal for his heroic gesture. But what's going on? Step back. Are you caring more about a dog than 1,000 humans? Well, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just how we work. It's just how our brain works. We're not meant to relate to numbers and statistics and big figures, but we're meant to relate to characters and stories. So what the TV reporter basically, he told the story of Max, the rescue dog, and that worked. So I'm sure if you dig inside yourself and you find some analogies, you'll find that this applies to everyone. Another important point, there was no jargon in the video. And I had this dilemma about using the word larval fish or baby fish. And larval fish, it's everywhere in my article. The word baby fish is nowhere to be seen in any peer-reviewed articles, of course. But I thought, I don't think larval will work very well because people might associate it to something gross and not cute at all. And then I asked myself, well, which one is the more human word? Well, larval, we don't have human larvae, but we have babies. So which one do you guess is the most human word, most relatable? And that's, of course, baby fish. And then when you add my funny accent to baby fish, yeah, it makes it works great. So it's not about dumbing it down, because at this point, most scientists go on the defensive side. Oh, you're dumbing it down. No, I'm not. I'm trying to humanizing it up. And that's a very important point to get across. When you think about your wording, think about which word is most human. And for the jargon, to make sure you've written a script that is understandable, well, test it with your grandma. If your grandma gets it, you've done an excellent job. And otherwise, try with other people, but not with your colleagues, because they will have a very biased view. What about the methods? Well, the reality, unfortunately, is that most people don't care about your methods. They don't even want to know about it. They just trust you as a scientist. They assume you've done a solid, sound research, and they just want to know what you found. Which, it's a bit shocking for us scientists, but that's how it works. And I have to say there's a few exceptions. For example, if you work on great white sharks, or if you work on, megafauna, lions and rhinos, well, then your methods will be about the amazing field work. And in that case, yeah, you should show some footage and talk about it. Because maybe the cool story is just about how you did the research. But in most cases, you can leave the methods out because people don't want to know about it. And think for a moment where the methods ended up being in Nature and all the other high-impact journals. At the very end, it's written very small with a small font, possibly in gray. And why is that? It's because they know very well that the readership doesn't even want to see them. So they reduced them to as much as possible and kept all the real information in the supplementary materials, which just a handful of people will actually download and read. So it's not a coincidence. Also, the best posters don't have the method section, because that's not what someone wants to know when they walk towards your poster. They just want to know the main message, and then if they're interested, they will talk to you. So think about this when you make your next poster, write your next outreach article or script for a video, whatever. Leave the methods out. There is structure, and this is very important, because when you put solid structure, you make it easier to understand. And the solid structure in my video starts like this, with the ordinary world, where it's just our baby fish doing its thing, swimming around, trying to find a home, associated with a positive, happy song. But then there's this middle section where you introduce that element of conflict, which is at the heart of storytelling. And that's associated with a completely different mood. The song, like change song, you put in a dramatic song, and that makes it very clear that there's a problem, there's a conflict. And then, in the final section, we go towards the resolution, and I put a positive song again and try to associate to the ending a positive mood, looking at the future in a hopeful way. So what? So you might have made an excellent job to this point, written a great story, made a great video, but you forgot to tell your audience why they should care. And that will destroy everything, because unfortunately only scientists believe in the value of knowledge for knowledge's sake. Everyone else wants to know what's at stake for them. So you have to think with the mind of the average bloke on the street and ask yourself, so what is at stake for him? Why my research should matter to him? So this was not obvious to me at all, because I'm a marine biologist, and when I think about fish, I have all sorts of things coming to my mind: the place in the food web, the ecological role, the life history, you name it, all sorts of things. But then by talking about my research with other people that were not marine biologists, I realized, they don't understand any of that stuff when they think about fish. they think about food. And that was a pretty tough thing to realize, but at the end I had to accept it. Fish is food for about the entirety of the people on this planet, except me and my fellow marine biologists. So you have to come to terms with these things, accept them, and use them. Because if you want to reach that broader audience, you have to go to their level. And so if fish is food, well, talk to them about food and food security. So my research will endanger fish, and so there's a problem in terms of food security. And that way they know what's at stake for them. Very important, especially for climate scientists, it concludes on a positive note, and I'm sure this applies to conservation as well. It's really easy for us to talk about all the bad things going on, and be gloomy, but unfortunately that has been proven not to work very well with the public. So try to be positive. And so my one message in the video was a message of hope. And in terms of climate change, I think till a couple of years ago, personally I had no hope we were going to fix this. But today, after COP21, the Paris Agreement, we're in a completely different position. And actually, I think there is hope. Yes, of course, we will have some effects of climate change. Some are already happening today. We're not going to get rid of those. But we have the chance to avoid the worst of climate change. So if there is a little bit of hope, well, use that as your message, because it works incredibly better than a doom and gloom story that will have your audience slit their wrists at the end of the video. So, for example, someone else that used this narrative of hope is Sylvia Earle. She is probably the most famous marine conservationist on the planet, and she won the TED Prize with this talk, which was all framed around these hope spots. So these hope spots are nothing other than marine protected areas. So it's just an old concept reframed with a cool, effective narrative of hope spots. And marine protected areas doesn't tell very much to the public, but they like this idea of hope for the future, for a better future. So think about it. It works. And so you should use it. And I'm sure this is applicable to your field of research as well. Then, so you have your message, and then you have your objective. So I like to tell my public that they can do something about it, that they're not just spectators of this, but they actually are players in this thing of climate change. And ideally, I want my audience to tell me things. Oh, you convinced me to reduce my carbon footprint and not to vote for Trump. That would be amazing. Still hasn't happened, though. I'm still looking for that moment. So many scientists believe that their job is just to inform the public, and in some circumstances, that's fair. However, personally, I think that's not enough, because in people, the general public, you realize that they don't do very much with that information by itself. They want to know what they can do about it. If they know that there is a problem, they will also want to know what they can do to fix it. So tell them, give them some ideas. And so in my case, was about telling them, well, not much in that video you watched, but in other videos I made, I push a lot more on this to give them some ideas on how they can reduce their carbon footprint by changing their diet, or driving electric cars, adopting solar panels, and voting wisely, because unfortunately today we know very well that one side of the political spectrum does not believe in climate change. So the vote is important. An anecdote, statistically, is meaningless, but doesn't matter. It's touching emotions, and so they get lots of traction for that reason. So basically, if your enemy has a lightsaber, you cannot fight it with a stick. So if our enemy uses powerful narratives, you cannot fight with graphs and time series, because you're going to lose. So you have to use the force of narrative yourself. So putting it all together, going back to the vertical axis. Vertical axis, once again, now it's upside down, so it goes from head, heart, gut, sex organs, and that basically measures how much emotion and feeling you get into that story. And on the horizontal axis here, you have your narrative structure. So the story starts, and then it goes up. Oop. Is this touch screen? Oh, okay. And so the end part, therefore, basically a storyline develops on this axis. So what you want to do when you start a story is to get out of this headspace as soon as possible and reach this magic rectangle between the gut and the heart, and that's where the connection happens. That's where you really connect to a broad audience, not just other scientists. And then, once you get there, you want your narrative structure to move that way. So you want to tell a story. So I like to put this, at least one graph in my whole workshop, just because you're scientists. And I know you can relate to graphs. It was meant to make you understand that, the story starts here with the element of conflict. And as you hook them in with, we don't know how the elections are going to end up, we don't know what the scuba diver is, or what's going to happen with your PhD, people are really interested. They are hooked in until you tell them how the story ends. So when they are hooked in is when you want to drop your facts, because that's when they're listening. So this is the magic period of time where they're actually listening to you. Because when you start the story, they're still a bit distracted. I think they're still a bit distracted, but then when you tell that something interesting happened, they're hooked. So they want listening, and so that's when you drop your facts. Now, a couple of examples on how. Yeah. I didn't know what's in your workshop. So, a couple of examples on how you can approach this for your own research. So, as I said, it's important to have a character. That character can be like was in my story, the subject of the research, so the baby fish. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be yourself. And we got a great example here at Adelaide Uni of Zoe that published this incredible paper that got more media coverage than the Higgs boson, I realized last week. And I think that's a story in itself. Got an altmetric score of 1200, which is the highest I've ever seen in my life. And the story there was about, this squids and octopus proliferating worldwide. But the perspective was not from the octopus or the squid. The perspective was Zoe's perspective, who was investigating why the population of the giant Australian cuttlefish in Whyalla is declining. And they've been investigating this for a while. They tried all different experiments, but they could not figure it out. And so they decided to take a step back and look for broader patterns. Maybe cuttlefish are on the decline globally. So they decided to analyze data sets from all over the world, cuttlefish, squid, octopus, put them all together, and then this bigger pattern emerged, which was completely unexpected because the results showed that all these animals are globally on the rise instead of on the decline. So you see, the story here is the researcher and its investigation to find the truth. It's a bit like a police story, and that people like that sort of stuff. So it doesn't have to be your animal, your tree. It can be yourself and how you ended up making that discovery. And I think there's even more options that I haven't thought about. Well, we just had a break, so we're going to continue. At the end, why bother? It's not in my job description. This goes back to what Andy was talking about earlier. Well, first argument, if your research is publicly funded, it should be your duty, because you receive money from taxpayers, so they are entitled to know what you do with their money. So that's just duty. Also, these days, journals are encouraging video abstracts. They're becoming a thing. I don't know in your field, but for example, Cell Publishing Group has a very strong YouTube channel, and they want, in current biology, I think they want one paper at least every issue to have a video abstract. And the pattern will be on the, so you will see more and more of these. There will be just takes time because the scientific publishing industry is low, but that's the direction. Also, more and more several funding bodies want you to do outreach. So I think in Australia we're a little bit behind with that, but for example, EU-funded project has to have an outreach component. Same thing for National Science Foundation in the US. They want you to allocate some money for outreach and use them for outreach. If you have a video that is understandable and is well done, you'll get a lot more exposure, and this will benefit your altmetrics. And as we know that these are becoming more and more important, it will directly help your career. Journalists, based on experience, I can tell you that journalists and bloggers love if you send them not just a media release that is plain text, but a media release with a cool image and the video. Because as I earlier said, video boosts your visibility on Google rankings, and people just simply much rather watch a video than read an article. That's the way it is. So all this is very new. So it's just a tiny minority of scientists that realize these things and appreciate the importance of it and appreciate what they can get out of it for their own careers. So if you're an early adopter, you'll stand out. So think about this, especially if you're in your early days. It makes a lot of sense to invest some time and resources in getting a video about your research out there, or anyway doing more outreach, because it will come back to you and help you later on. So simplified, but it works this way. You do your research, you produce an outreach product, let's say a video, you gain more visibility, that helps you getting more citations, because more people will get to know about your research, even possibly outside your field, so you get more citations. More visibility on the internet is measured by these article-based metrics called altmetrics, which basically count all the mentions your article gets on the internet, social media, news outlets, blogs, YouTube, you name it. Also, because you made the video and now your research, even if it is very specific, it's now understandable to everyone, you could end up having interdisciplinary collaboration, because it could well be that a researcher completely outside your field now knows what you're doing and finds a common thing and gives you a call and say, hey, I have this really cool instrument, I'm an engineer, I see you do drone surveys in the forest, maybe we should collaborate. You never know, it can happen. And basically all these things together result in more funding. More grants, more funding, more research, happy scientists. So putting it all together, it's actually a major change in academia. We're moving away slowly, but we are moving away from the publish or perish, which was based on publishing as much as possible in the most prestigious journals as possible, because the king metric was the impact factor. Now these new metrics that are article based, they're not linked to the journal anymore, they're based on the article, are pushing us towards this new system which we could call visible or vanish. So it's not anymore about the prestige of the journal, but it's about the individual article. How visible, how much visibility it got, and how what the real impact of that article is. So you don't have to rely on the other articles published in that journal and the impact factor. It's just about your own research and the visibility it gets. Also, it's really important to get the real science out there because, as I earlier said, these anti-scientists or pseudo-scientists, call them how you like, or politicians, they're really good at communication, and so they're actually getting lots of traction and exposure and people on their side. So it's our duty to fight them and get the real science out there. Also, by doing this, it will inspire younger people in following careers in STEM. So, yeah, which goes back to the point Andy made, which also institutions like if you bring more students enrolling, so that will help you directly as well. And also, as I found, my videos, so if you use that type of video with that level of language, they will be used in schools, and that's pretty good. It's amazing. I didn't even expect it to happen. It just happened. I have to say, I was really positively impressed by how far this video got. For example, I made another one about coral bleaching, which is so far the most successful. It's being translated now in French by an NGO, and they developed a whole teaching program around it. They're using in schools in France, and it's amazing. So these things really go far, and you can really touch thousands and thousands of people in no other way you'll be able to. So at the end, do it even because it feels good. It's rewarding. So now, what style of video? Well, if you work on lions or great white sharks, you have a really good reason to use your own fieldwork footage. And you should totally do it because people will love it. However, the reality is most scientists don't work with megafauna and really cool things. They work with bacteria, viruses, and things you can't even see. So you don't have that option. So either you make a talking head video, and I've seen plenty of those where the author of the study films itself with the webcam in its office, and they don't work very well, to be honest. They have a really low production quality, and they don't go very far. The third option you have is animation. And the great thing about animation is that it works with everything. With great white shark, with lions, with bacteria, viruses, you can make a sketch of just about anything. Also, there's been some research done that compared how effective whiteboard videos, like the one I've showed you, are compared to a talking head video. So they used the same voiceover on a talking head video and a whiteboard animation, and then they measured a bunch of things, and they found that whiteboard videos produce a better learning outcome. So they work. People find them more fun, and they share them more on social media, so your research will spread further. And also, because it's about drawing these figures on a whiteboard, as you draw these, as these figures appear on screen, the audience, the viewer, tries to anticipate what you're drawing subconsciously. And then when they get it right, oh, I think that's a fish. Oh, yeah, it's a fish. They get a little reward, a little pop of dopamine in their brain, and that drives engagement, keeps them engaged with the video. Without that element, if it's just a person talking to a camera, you don't have any of that. We've seen plenty of people talking to cameras. You will have to be really, really, really engaging talking to a camera to keep them hooked in. So whiteboard videos have that advantage. So now, how to make them? So this is the software I've used. I've did a bit of research on what's out there, and I think this is the best one, and it's affordable. You can get it for like 1 month long license for $30, and it's fairly easy to use. For me, I have to admit it was easier than it might be for you because I have a background in graphic design, but it's still feasible for just about anyone. I've seen a colleague of mine with no graphic design background making a pretty good video anyway by herself. However, it takes time to learn, of course, and also takes time to learn how to make a decent voiceover. So I made this package of online video tutorials, which I'm finishing. It will be finished in about 2 weeks, and it will be available online for somewhere around $50. So if you're interested in learning how to make a good voiceover, how to make a good animation, just like the one I showed you, you can sign up for this course, and for you attending this workshop today, you'll have a 20% discount. So in case you're interested in that, let me know. You can send me an email, and I'll make sure I give you the discounted price. So let's say now you have your video. What do you do with it? Well, here is where having a strong social media presence becomes really important, because the bigger your audience on social media, the more people you reach. But even in the case you don't have a strong social media presence, it's not all lost, because you can use your institution's social media presence. For example, the Environment Institute has a very strong social media presence. They have someone working almost full-time, tweeting all the time.
Oh,
yeah.
I'll talk about that.
Yeah, okay.
It's not exactly full-time.
Well, it feels like it is full-time
yeah.
because we have smart software that makes it look like that it's that way. So you can use your institution, or you can use your journal. Now more and more journals are venturing on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. So they're building up their own network, so you can put that video there. And also, you should totally include it in your media release, because, as I said already a couple of times, journalists and bloggers love it. And once again, just to remind you, it will help you with your metrics. Also, another thing that you should totally do once you have your videos is to participate in these competitions. So now, because science communication is becoming a thing, more and more of these competitions are popping up everywhere in every field. And you should totally check out thinkable.org, which is like an aggregator for all these competitions. And it's basically a platform where institutions can host their own competition. They can put the money. It's managed by this platform. And they count the votes. They do all the job for you. And, all sorts of institutions for example, I did one in Thinkable, got a third place there. Another one for the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, in case you're in the marine sciences. But there is actually competition in just about any field. So you just have to look for them, keep your eyes open, they will pop up, it's guaranteed. Also, because I was a poor PhD student, for me there was no option really other than doing it myself. So I did it with the lowest tech I could get. So the voiceover in that video was done with my iPhone headphones, which have a microphone, and I recorded directly on my laptop in my room. But
if you had $300 or something...
Yeah, you can get a professional voiceover done.
Would you think that would be $300 well spent, or would you just do it yourself again?
I think so. I think it would be. It depends how professional you want to make it look. Professional is good, but always keep in mind that people also appreciate authenticity on YouTube. So, for example, now I have a YouTube channel about marine sciences where all my videos are, and my accent and my voice become part of the branding. And for example, the last voiceover I made, someone pointed out I made a couple of little mistakes in English, and I thought, should I fix it or not? And I thought, you know what, I'll leave it this way because it will come across as more authentic. And people appreciate those things. So professional is good. If you can get a voiceover actor to do it in a studio, that's great because it will sound amazing. But you also should consider, if you can do a decent job, of course, it has to be of some standard quality. If you do it next to your computer fan or your air conditioner, people will just pull their headphones out because it will be terrible to hear. But if you do a decent enough job, even doing it by yourself, I think it makes sense. So there's no one rule for everyone. But for example, if it is a PhD student doing a video for his own research, like I did. Just do it yourself. There's no need of a studio. And I'll actually, get back to that later. Yeah. So story is king. So scripting is the most important thing and takes about, in my case, 20 hours if you know the subject, because it's not something you write and it's done. You have to write it, show it to people, get some feedback, make sure the jargon is out, tweak it a bit. It takes time. So about 20 hours for the scripting if you know the subject. Voiceover, if it's not the first time you do it, takes just a couple of hours or less. However, the first time I did the voiceover for that video, it took me a whole day because I didn't like my voice. So I kept doing over and over again until I was happy with it. And then I started editing it with the software to make it sound a little bit better in my own mind. So yeah, it depends. But if you're happy with your voice, 1 hour, 2 hours for the voiceover, that's it. Mixing the music, that could add more time. We will have to learn how to do that. The animation, drawings and animation, I'd think about 20 hours. If you know what you're doing for a 3-minute video. So if you know what you're doing in 40 hours total, you're done.
So a week full time.
Yeah, and for that first video, because I was pretty, I knew how to use the software and I knew the subject. It took me a couple of weekends and a couple of evenings, and it was done. Yeah. So it's not huge, and looking back, it was totally worth the investment. Totally. Even just the cash prize, $6,000. I still cannot believe I got those money. Yeah. So it is worth it. Yes, it takes a bit of effort. It certainly does, and it can push you a little bit outside your comfort zone. That's totally fair, but it's worth it. Trust me. So, putting it all together. Talk the way they listen. So by now, it should be pretty clear how people listen. So you should talk the way they listen, not just talk the way you like to talk. And we know that story is powerful, and so you should totally use it. And the way to use it, the simplest way, is to use that N but the for template, which is super simple, but that's exactly the reason why it works. Because it's simple, it's flexible, and I believe that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And now I use it all the time, even subconsciously. And at the end, if I did it, you can do it too. I'm not an animator. Yes, it was a little bit more easier for me because I knew about graphic design, but still it's feasible for you. So you can do it. If you're still not convinced that you can do it, I can help you. For example, now I'm making a video for Andy about one of his new articles coming up. I can do the script writing, the voiceover, finding the right music, sound effects, animation, and infographics. So I do it all. Now I work for myself as a freelance science communicator. So if you need any of those things, you can come to me and I can help you with that. A couple of things I'm involved at the moment is this startup business called Animate Your Science. I'm trying to bring these concepts of storytelling and use of animation videos to the scientific publishing industry and create a startup that produces really good graphical and video abstracts for papers. It will launch in January, so if you're interested in that, you can get in touch. Also, I'm looking for people with some connections in the scientific publishing industry, especially in the environmental sciences, which is close to my expertise. So if you're involved in journals, please get in touch because I would like to talk. Last thing, I have this YouTube channel called The Coral Garden, which has plenty other videos about marine sciences and climate change. So if you want to see other examples of animation videos and stories, you can find them there. And that's about it. I'll thank you for your attention. You find my website, my Twitter handle, and my email. and now I'm more than happy to answer any questions.